And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Annalee Stone, who died for about 6 minutes and came back changed forever. Annalee, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
If you don't mind, let's just start on the day that it happened and go from there.
Okay. So in 2016, in November 8th, actually, so just had the anniversary, I had an ectopic pregnancy that ruptured and caused me to have internal bleeding that I was aware of, but I didn't know how serious it was. And about maybe an hour before I went to the hospital, I had joked about how I was bleeding to death. And then I woke up in the hospital and I guess I had fainted. They took me and they found out that I had lost, at this point, I lost half of the blood supply to my body. So I was dying and I knew I was dying. I had this overwhelming feeling of panic that set in. It was pretty intense. And I knew something was very, very wrong. And it was physically unpleasant. And later, like a year later, I realized what it was when I was in front of my classroom teaching science. But at the time I didn't know. And it was just like this, I felt like I was going to explode, this tension building up inside me. And as soon as it got to the point where I couldn't take it almost to the point where I couldn't take it, I was out of my body. And I was in, like, when you release a balloon inside a house and it hits the ceiling, and it bounces, like that's what I was doing. I was bouncing on the ceiling of like the hospital room, and I'm looking down and I see myself and the doctors like crash, I'm crashing and they're trying to resuscitate me. And I had this one thought and it was like, shit, that sucks. That was it. That was like my big epiphany was like, oh, well, that sucks. And then I realized, oh, my personality is still intact, right? Because my sarcasm made it to where I am now. And I'm watching this happen and I had zero attachment to it. It was just facts. I was just watching a show play, the scene play out. And I heard the flatline and, I watched them it's hard to explain time properly because it doesn't exist the way it does here. But let's say that I'm above, right, my body. And if I look to my right, I'm in the hospital room. But if I look to my left, I was somewhere else completely. I was in this bright white space, like a room, I guess, but I really couldn't see walls. It was just lit, like very warm white light. And I was alone. I didn't see anyone. I didn't feel alone, but I didn't see anybody. And my attention kept going back and forth from the hospital room to the other, where I was in this other place, dimension. I don't know exactly what, but then I was like, oh God, my kids. Right. So that brought my attention back to the hospital room. And I'm like, Ashley, my oldest at the time, she was 21 and she was up north, like 200 miles away. And the second, before I was even done thinking about her, I was in her classroom watching her take an exam in college. Like I noted the time on the wall, what she was wearing, everything. And I was like, okay, she'll be fine. And then I'm like, Lucy, my little one, who was just under 2 at the time. I just had her, a year and a half earlier. And she was in the waiting room playing with Legos. And I was there. Like, I was transported at the speed of thought to wherever I, thought of. And then my attention was brought back to the hospital room where they called time of death. And they were talking about it. And one of the doctors had made a comment about how, well, what did you expect? She was just a former drug addict or something like to that effect, because in my medical records, it had stated that I had dealt with an addiction to opiates like Oxycontin and had been sober at that point for 8 years. But like that was still in my record. So he still used that. He made that comment and I didn't have a reaction to it at that time. It was just a fact that happened. But then I was now not present for here anymore. Now I'm in the left, right? Like I'm looking left and I'm in this other place and there's no one there. But then suddenly there is someone there and it's me. So me looking at me, but it's a version of me that's different it looks like me, but not really. Like there's things are off about it. Like I realize I'm looking at myself, but I knew why I was there all of a sudden. It was like, okay. And the one word that was spoken to me was nope. Just nope. And I knew I'm going back. But that one word, nope, was encoded with 1,000 different messages inside of it that would like reveal themselves over the next years, like, and still happening now. Like, so that one word, like, was like a zip file, I guess you could say, that was filled with other messages that I would get later, and make sense of, or try to make sense of. So I knew nope meant you're going back. And so I got sent back into my body. But before I say that, like, I would just say, when we're out of body, you're huge, like you're everywhere. Like it's this humongous amount of space you're taking up without taking up space. And I could feel that I had a density to me, but I also was intermingling with other energies that I couldn't see, but I could feel. It's really hard to explain. But I realized I didn't have a head or eyes. So I don't know how I could see, but I could see in 360 degrees, like, because there was no head, bone, like skull to like impede your vision, like at all. So I could just see everything. If I thought about what's behind me, I could see everything. Like it, just anything at the thought of, at the speed of thought, it was there, available. It's weird. So I get shoved back. I remember thinking, like, how am I going to fit in that tiny body? Right. Going back in. And yeah, it hurt like hell going back in. So I get shoved through my navel, through my belly button. That's how I re-entered through my body, which was odd because I've never heard anything about like the belly button being like a place for a spirit to enter. Like that's not something I'd ever heard of. So it was odd. And that's when I saw the tunnel. So like I saw a tunnel on the way back in, and that was because I was being shoved through my belly button, and it hurt, physically painful as hell. And that's what actually brought me back to life. The pain from that is what shot me up onto the table and like gasping for air. So I scared the crap out of everyone in that room. They were not even paying attention to my body anymore. Like, and also I was still hooked up to the monitors, but there was no previous beeping that happened to alert them that I was coming back. Right. So I just shot up, and immediately I knew what had happened. I knew I had died. I didn't know how long it had been, but I started asking him, did you say this? Did you, and I'm like, did you say something about me being a former drug addict? And the doctor was like, how do you know that? And I'm like, please tell me I'm wrong. Like, please tell me I didn't hear that. You know what I mean? Like, because I understood that if it was true, that would mean that, yeah, I died and like was still able to see everything and what was going on. And he just was like, I'm sorry. He just apologizing. I'm like, did you say it or not? He's like, yeah. And then there were one guy over here, I think his name was Anthony, maybe. He had dropped his clipboard because he was startled by my awakening, like back up. He looked like he was about to have a heart attack. And I apologized to him. He's like, he's like, you're okay. Like you were dead. I'm like, right. I was dead. How long? And then that's when they told me how long I've been dead for. So I was kind of upset because I didn't want it to be true, like I didn't want those things validated for me because it was scary. Because I realized, like, I just died. Like I have kids. I have, I mean, this is not something that ever, of course we all die, but it hadn't crossed my mind that I would be in the situation to leave them orphaned, right? Like that would be horrible. So, and I was really upset with myself that I didn't think more about my kids. Like I saw them and like checked in on them, I guess you could say, but I wasn't like sad about it. I wasn't like, who's going to take care of them? Like those thoughts weren't present. None of the negative kind of thinking processes were present at all during this experience. So I was beating myself up about that for a while. But over time, like I said, there was encoded messages. And so over time, I started to get the answers for what I had been questioning about that experience. But that's what happened that day. And I came back completely different. Like everything about me was different. My personality, my drive, my mission in life, my purpose. I had a clear idea now of what I needed to be doing. Whereas before I just, didn't know what I should be doing with my life. And it's changed my selfishness and a sense of ego, like problematic ego has been curbed greatly. And now I'm just all about teaching and being of service to other people. Whereas before I wouldn't have cared at all about that kind of stuff in any way, shape or form. But it's been hard because as a former research scientist, I go off facts so that I can measure, I can see, I can feel, I can have some tangible, they're tangible, right? For scientific method. This is not one of those things. So it caused, well, like prior to dying, I had a problem and like an internal battle going on. I was always interested in like the occult and like tarot and witchcraft and stuff, but it didn't jive with science at all, right? And I'd had a lot of paranormal experiences in my life, like really big ones, like scary stuff friends have witnessed with me. And I just would not allow it to be true. Like I just would lie. I would tell myself like I made it's in my imagination. I'm playing tricks on myself, like whatever I had to say to make it okay, right? Because it's not science, can't be true. This situation fixed that for me completely. Like, and the other thing too was being raised in a very traditionally conservative and religious home. I was always told that my interest in the occult and things like that were of the devil and I'd be going to hell for that kind of stuff. And I had this guilt in me for my entire life. I died when I was 39, right? 38. So for 38 years, I'd lived with this idea that what if they're right? Like, what if that's true? Like, what if I'm going to go to hell because of this, whatever. And this experience fixed that for me as well. So I came back with no more guilt about religion stuff. And also the understanding that, yeah, science is valid, but science doesn't know everything. And there's no way I could prove what I'm saying, like what I saw, like other than prove I was dead. Can't prove what happened in that time, but I don't care because it's my reality and like that's what matters. So it killed those two big issues that I'd had in life about my belief system, if that makes sense. So yeah. And now I'm just all about furthering my knowledge about it and making a mark and leaving something positive when I leave, that I'll have some kind of positive contribution, attributed to my experiences, I guess.
Annalee, thank you for sharing your experience with us.
No problem.
Did you ever go and verify with your daughters what you saw?
Yeah, I did. That was one of the first things when my daughter Ashley found out that I had been in the hospital. She was like, why didn't someone call me? And I'm like, it wouldn't have mattered. You were taking a test anyway. And she's like, yeah, I was. How did you know that? And I was like, were you? Because I had said, I didn't even think about it when I said that to her. I hadn't even thought what I was saying like was a problem. And she was like, how did you know that? And I was like, I saw you in your class, and I'm like, there was this time and you were wearing this. And she's like, stop it. Like she was mad at me. She thought I was pulling her leg. I was like, I'm not. So she's like, you died. And she's like, I'm going to hit you. Oh my God, you can't do that to me. Like she was mad. So, cause they didn't tell her that part. They just said I was in the hospital and, recovering. They didn't tell her I actually died.
And your other daughter as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So she was in the waiting room, with my ex-husband at the time. And that's what she was doing. I asked, what was she doing? He's like, oh, she was just playing with the Legos on this little Lego table they had. And I was like, cool. Yeah, I saw it. So yeah, I tried to verify anything I could verify right when I woke, like right when I came back. It was the most pressing thing for me.
When you saw yourself, do you think it was another being or entity looking like you? Or do you think maybe it was your higher self?
Yeah. So I didn't have the language for this previously. So it was really hard to even comprehend it. But since started my graduate program in consciousness studies, I'm now of the belief that it was my higher self. And and also that part of it was me retrieving some fragmented parts of myself that I had lost due to childhood trauma and things and big events that happened earlier on that were also plaguing me at that point in my life.
Can you tell us about some of the things that were encoded with the no?
Yeah, like so every like so much stuff. Like when I heard no, like first of all, that's a word I would say, right? So it was interesting because it wasn't no, it was not you're going back, it was nope. And in that same tone that I would use sarcastically. So I that's why I also think it was like my higher self because it was, and it was interesting. So I've heard like since that I've gotten the messages like since then, like, okay, no, everything that all of this has been here for you this whole time. Like you are like, yeah, you can see ghosts and yeah, you can hear them. Like anything I think of now and I don't know the answer to will now pop in. It's like turned something on in my brain. I don't know how to put it. Like before I had experiences after this, it was like that word got in my head and it now allows me to get other messages, I guess you could say, that pop in when I need them. Like occasion, like not all the time, but definitely much more than they were before. And so the idea that why I was up there and I didn't care about my kid, like why I wasn't upset about my children, right? Um, I was upset in Earth, like on Earth, I would have been upset, but I knew, so I got the answer. You already knew you planned this.
Hmm.
So this is something that had been planned prior, like, and I had that feeling at the time too. I didn't know how to put my finger on it. It was like my life was spiraling out of control. I was drinking alcohol. I'd beaten an addiction, a severe addiction to Oxycontin that, robbed me of like 10 years, good years of my life, and then turned to alcohol and was acting totally ridiculously. And when I came back, I could not physically drink alcohol anymore. Like literally, it killed my addiction within 6 minutes. Like that death of 6 minutes made me unable to drink alcohol. Like it just, I can't, like physically could not even swallow it. Like it would just start foaming in my mouth and become not liquid anymore. And my doctor could not tell me what the heck it was. Like he's like, I have no idea why this has caused you to have like an allergy, reaction to it now. Like there's nothing medical I can point to, but take it as a blessing, And I definitely did. Um, but I have a theory on that now too that I've also learned in since we've in consciousness studies that like I don't need the alcohol anymore because I reconnected with my divine self, like the aspect that we forget when we're here on Earth, right? And when we use drugs and alcohol, it's like we're trying to fill something, we're trying to fill a void, and we don't maybe not know what that void is. And I'm starting to believe that it's the lack of connection to our divinity. And there, I went and reconnected, so I got my fix. I don't need it anymore.
Is there anything that you discovered that you planned for this life pre-birth?
Yeah, I guess underlying themes in my life that were kind of obscured to me before are now very visible. And that is about teaching and being a teacher and using experiences that I've had. Like, yeah, that my life has been really hard and much more than I think the average person. Um, and because of that, I picked that for a reason because, like I need to help other people that aren't navigating so well. Like all of the things I went through before that I was like, that's not fair. Why that happened to me? I came back with a clarity of like, oh, that happened to me because I could handle it. And so I'm going to take that and now use it to help other people so that they can handle it. Um, so yeah, like definitely I feel there was a purpose. Like I came back with a fire under my ass, pardon my language, but to go back to college, finish my college degree, and go on and become a teacher, which I did within, let's see, this is November. So by August, I was hired in my first role as a teacher um, for high school for, kids that were troubled. Actually, that was the school that I first got hired for was kids with drama like I had and trauma like I had. And that's, I found like when I got that job, I was like, this is fulfilling something for me that my research work and science did not, like this is a different feeling. And it's my purpose and it's evolved slightly since, but definitely I have a path and it's very clear to me now. Whereas before it was just, what am I doing? I had no idea.
You said that you were intermingling with other energies.
Mhm.
Can you comment on that?
Yeah. I mean, like, so I didn't see anyone, right? Like I didn't see it. Like I didn't see the dead relatives or any of that or any other beings, but I felt them. Like I was not alone. Like, so, when we're out of body, we're like little dots of light almost. I don't know how to really say it, but it's spread over a very immense area. And at the edges of it, where like, I guess if you want to just use your hands and fingers as an example, like as you reach out as far as your arm span can go, you know, it's much bigger than that. But at the ends of like where your fingers would be, you can feel other energies that are like yours, but not yours, like around. And I could feel that like all around me, every like boundary, quote unquote, of myself, which is hard to even define, but I could feel other beings around me. So I wasn't like, oh God, I'm all by myself in this place. I just didn't see anyone else, but I wasn't alone.
And you weren't communicating with them.
No, so the only communication that I had was with myself, which did not happen verbally. It happened in telepathically.
Since you're a graduate student and you've been studying consciousness and transformative studies, I'd like to get your definition of consciousness, especially now that you've had this experience.
Wow, that's a big task. So I mean, it's evolving for me still, but consciousness is like I think it's, right now what as we exist here on Earth, like it's our ability to, identify as an individual. Like we're conscious that we're here, but in reality, in the other, how we are truly, our state, it's that we are all like everything's everything else. So like when we're all part of the same thing, like I felt this 100% when I was there. Like every difference we have here on Earth with each other and the bickering and fighting we have is totally pointless, because at the end of the day, we literally all just link back up together to become this one giant sea of consciousness. Like consciousness is everyone's experience over all of existence that is there. It's around us constantly, and we choose to tap into it or we don't, I guess, I choose to tap into it now.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's interesting is even though you tap into this sea of consciousness, you still retain your own identity or ego.
Right. It's similar to whales, dolphin, like animals with that, like whale pods, they have their own sense of self. And then they also have their, pod self, right? Where they're part of their pod, and they have the two different like roles. And I think it's no different with us. We're here, we're individuals. Like the way I put in my analogy is that we're all individual drops of water that when together form a sea of consciousness. Like everybody is their individual self, but once we're back together, we're all one.
Do you think at any point we'll lose our identity completely?
I don't know, because I'm not sure that our identity that we have now is something that is cosmic, like on a cosmic level, like if that's retained or if it's just for the purpose of learning here on Earth. Like, I don't know yet. This is something I've been pondering myself, but I tend to think that we would retain our memories, but that they would just be that memories and not necessarily still how we identify.
You've got a lot of information from when you said no that was like encoded with it. But while you were there on the other side, sometimes people will say like, I've known everything, or I knew everything, but when they come back, they forget it. Did you know everything?
So no, but I know I for me, I figured out what that means, like 100%. So how I said that I was like, I thought about my one child and then I was taken to her classroom 200 miles away. And then I thought back to my other one and it was right there in the hospital. It's the same thing. All that knowledge is available to you, but it's not just downloaded to you at that, like just because you die. It's like, it's there. So all you have to do is think about it and then you'll know it. But there's so much stuff to possibly know, right? Like that would still be a process, like it would still be a process of acquiring information, just because you'd have to still think about it to want to know about it, Does that make sense? Like,
right.
So I think, yeah, it's all there for us. But it's not like this giant download that like, oh, I'm all knowing. It's no, when you ask in your mind, you get the answer. But until then, you're still without it.
Right. Like it's all accessible.
Right.
If you can ask.
If you know what to ask. Yeah, exactly. Because you don't know what you don't know. Right. So if you don't know about it, there's no way you know to ask about it. So yeah, it's a process.
Do you think our consciousness is separate from our body in a dual system, or do you think our consciousness creates our body?
Oh my God. That's a hard one. So it's definitely, so as a scientist, like former scientist, there's a lot of interest right now in, where's the soul? Like, where is it located? Right. And they think it might be in microtubules, the structures that come together during cell division. And they don't exist any other time than when they're needed. And then when they are needed, they come together, they coalesce from all of the, you know, just random proteins and things that are in our cells, and they come together and form, and they break apart again, and then they come back together, and they don't lose any data when this is happening. So I know that there's some studies out of Sweden where they talk about the soul consciousness being located within these microtubules, because they can break apart and then come back together at another time and place and still have the same information, right? I honestly think that right now we're not capable of really understanding what the hell is going on in this regard. I think that it's far beyond our scope of understanding. And with science, we have a tendency to, well, we do this throughout history, is like when we don't know the answer to something, we say it's fake instead of just saying we don't know. And it's frustrating, right? Because that's not true. Like, just because we don't know doesn't mean it's fake or not real. Like, it means we don't know yet. So I think we just don't have the capacity scientifically or even at an emotional maturity level to understand it yet.
Generally, everybody has a lot of mental chatter going on.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice that was eliminated when you were on the other side?
Yeah, I did. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think of that though until you just asked me that question. Yeah. Yeah, it was not there. I talk constantly to myself in my head all day long, every day, and out loud, even when I'm by myself or not. So there was none of that. Like, yeah, there wasn't. I was present in present time, and I was not worried about before or after. I was just there. And that's something that I've struggled to do here.
Do you think that mental chatter is not part of our consciousness or not part of our awareness? It's somehow part of our brain, and somehow that kind of locks into our consciousness or something?
So for me, okay, so like I learned, like there's something I learned recently that changes my outlook on this. Like before I would have said it was more of a human issue, like of just having background noise, like noise pollution. But I'm not of that mindset anymore. I think that it is our dialogue with the other side. Like we are constantly talking back and forth. So when I would see people that were psychic or that could talk to ghosts, I would think that they were talking to people in like as in another person's voice was talking to them, and they would answer. When you see people like pretending or not pretending to talk to ghosts or something, that's what I would think. I think it was a different voice, but I learned fairly recently that it's not always that way. It can be your own voice in your head, and that's where your guides or whatever you want to call it, depending on angels for you or guides or whatever for someone else, that's how they talk to you. And so when I put that filter on it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. So it could have been my own voice. So the times when I've given myself an answer to something that I've been struggling with, and it just popped into my head out of nowhere, that could have been something else and not just my imagination. That opened a lot of doors for me, like to think about it differently. So instead of it just being background noise, it can actually be maybe some help that's trying to come to you if you choose to filter it properly, but if it's just bothering you, like you can't, make sense of it, or you're adding to it on top of it, like with other stress or struggles, then I can see it could get a little overwhelming, and become more of a human burden. Does that make sense? Just like with schizophrenia, like, with studies on schizophrenia, they've discovered that in people that talk to spirits, there's no real difference there in brain science. Like in the neurophysiology, brains are almost identical. The difference is the narrative. So if you have a person that's been told, hey, you're special, you're going to be a shaman, you can talk to ghosts, like that person's experience with those voices is going to be completely different than a person who's told that they have schizophrenia. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so mindset has a lot to do with it also, like, and what your inner narrative is and what your cultural, family upbringing's been like too.
Do you think that when your spirit guides or angels are talking to you, they're actually talking to your higher self, and then your higher self relays the message to you?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yes, I think that that could definitely be a way. I think because, I mean, think about like, it's kind of alarming, right? If you heard a random voice in your head, it would be alarming because that's what we've been told, that that's not a good thing to hear voices, right? Like that's a sign of psychosis. So that's not desired. So absolutely, like to filter out so that people were more comfortable with receiving messages. That could absolutely be the case. Yes, I think that's an excellent question.
Can you talk a little bit about your previous beliefs as you were a skeptic and you didn't believe in the afterlife and how you've changed now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a skeptic. It's really hard for me to believe wholeheartedly a lot of people's stories about things because, even though I've experienced things myself, um, I don't know why that is. I just kind of maybe cynical part of me. I don't know. But before, I was raised in a really, like I said, religious home, and it just didn't resonate with me because I saw like the hypocrisy of like a lot of my family's actions compared to what they're talking about. And around 8 years old, like I was like, I don't want to go to church anymore. This is stupid. And then I became the black sheep of the family. So right away, and proudly hold that title to this day. Um, so I was instead I went to the opposite. I went scientific, and I was and I think this is out of fear for my own fear too, is like my whole life from childhood going up forward, I've been plagued with crazy paranormal things that have happened to me and my family. And like I have people that have been witness to it, like scary stuff, like horror movie stuff that's so hard to accept as truth that I wouldn't allow myself to. I'd say, no, that's my imagination. I'd use science as an excuse to not believe in it, like to deny my own reality, literally. Um, and and it worked for a period of time. But as I got older and those things it kept happening on a regular basis. And it's like, all right, so I can't say I'm a little kid and it's my imagination anymore, right? Like, what's going on? Like, and I'm just still, nope, I'm not believing it. And then this happened, and it's like, oh crap. Well, I guess I don't know everything after all. And yeah, so if that was possible, then the other stuff's possible too, right? And that's the scary part, is like accepting that that's my reality that happened, which therefore means that these other things are a possibility too. Like it opens the door to a lot more than just death.
Have you noticed after your NDE that you've had cognitive changes that could be considered psychic or paranormal?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I read cards, the tarot cards, and I started doing it online, like on groups, and so I started recording it, right? Because I didn't I don't remember what I say when I read cards. So to help out with my clients, I would like record it so I could try to remember whose situation was what for later. And I watched the tape of one of them, and I was like, what am I doing? I wasn't even looking at the cards. I was like staring around at the ceiling and like talking to people. I don't remember any of it. I was appalled. I was very shocked by how I looked. I was like, what am I doing? Like, oh my God, I look like a spaz. Like, who am I talking to? Like I thought I was just reading cards, but the film shows something different. Shows me having interaction with something I can't see and I don't remember. So that was alarming to me very much. I got really worried. And then I started to hear things audibly that I've actually caught on tape. Like I actually have put it like video proof of this, um, where people call my name in the middle of the night or say things to me like, listen, pay attention, things like that. And there's no one here except for me. And like even my security cameras pick it up. And it's like, what? So I actually went and got tested at USC. I went and had a psych eval done in 2018, yeah, 2018, to make sure that I wasn't like losing my mind. You know, because again, the skeptic in me was like, this can't be real, right? Like it has to be, I'm going crazy. So I went and checked that out, and it wasn't that.
Do you think that potentially a lot of people may have psychic things happen to them and it's too scary for them and they kind of shut it down?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Like, I don't think everybody's psychic. I mean, I know a lot of people say that we all have abilities, but don't necessarily think that's true. I don't want to think that's true. It scares me with that idea. That possibility scares me. But for the people that do, it's terrifying. I mean, it's scary. Like, I can't lie about that. Like, I still get scared. I read cards, I channel, I guess, energies for people to help get them answers. And that doesn't scare me. But when I'm home alone and someone says my name and they're not, no one's here, that's scary. Like, to me, I'm not perfect. I'm not comfortable with it yet. Trying is really hard. So if I'm scared of it, then I'm assuming a lot of people will be scared of it too, because I'm pretty not scared. I'm a lot scared of a lot. So I would think it would be, especially if you grew up religious, like if you grew up in a home where it tells you that that stuff is of the devil, like that's terrifying. So, you don't, what's a demon now? Like that's the first thing someone with a religious upbringing would think is like, oh God, the devil's trying to trick me or whatever. That's scary. I mean, so yeah, I think that definitely im- impacts your ability to know if you even have abilities or not.
I would think that probably the biggest fear of having any type of experience like that would be the fear that you're going crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, but I learned a little something that I'm so grateful for in my graduate program. And that is, and no offense, like I hope this is not like that, crazy people don't ask if they're crazy. They don't worry about being crazy. They don't go, oh my God, am I losing my mind? Did that really happen right now? They don't check reference. They don't verify. They don't like have that. They just go with it. They're like in on it. They're in, and that's their reality, right? So the mere fact, and my professor said, the mere fact that you question it, like the mere fact that you're like, am I God? Like, and you worry about it and you take steps to make sure that that's not the case is indicative of someone that's not crazy. So like,
That's a good point.
yeah.
So I guess the trick is to learn how to relax and possibly communicate.
I mean, yeah, I guess I've gotten some messages for people since then that have been really helpful for them. So like before I wouldn't have even acknowledged it. I would have just put it out as imagination, right? So yeah, you get information. You can get information. I'm not saying that you always do or will, but that's a possibility. I mean, there's things out there. If you're ready, I think then that's when they start to come to you, and I don't think it's a process you can rush or determine at your own time. I think it's something that has to happen organically, through life experience or through dying. I don't know. Most people I've talked to that have died have come back with a sensitivity, I'll call it, to seeing spirits or hearing spirits or knowing things that they don't know how they know it.
Did the other side seem dreamlike or more real than here?
Oh, that's a good question. It wasn't like when we dream vividly, it wasn't like that. It was real. It's a different, and in my memory bank, if I think of a dream that I had that was really vivid, this doesn't even compare at all. Like it's like a million times more than that. It's like I cannot forget a detail about it ever. It's seared in my mind. It's real. It was very real and it was very familiar. Like even though I didn't know where I was, I absolutely knew where I was. If that makes sense. I know it doesn't make sense, but it was. I was home.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was
that's a
comfortable.
common way people will describe it as home.
Yeah, like I knew when I heard nope, I was like, God dang it, I'm going back. Like that was like, I knew exactly what it meant. And I was like, oh, here we go. And I was kind of bummed about it a little bit, but not, that was only when I came back. I was like, oh, that was really pleasant. Like I'd way rather be there than back here. Like, and then the fact that I'm a mom and all that stuff kicked back in. I'm like, okay, well, thank God I'm back. But for that brief moment, like it was like, so yeah, it's definitely more real, I guess.
But what about comparing it to this 3D world? Is it more real than here or less real than here?
It's different.
Or it's just different?
It's just different. I feel like it's like I'm in a room, right? But I couldn't see the walls or the floor. It's just like it was more of a abstract construct in my mind than anything. Like I guess it was a creation, like it was like in my mind I knew I was in a room, so therefore I was in a room. I don't know. Like I think it has to do with what you're projecting from your consciousness, like outward, right? So where was I going to go? I wasn't staying, right? Like, so apparently I already knew that. So then what would I do? What would my mind create to give me a space to get a message from my higher self, right? A waiting room, I guess. Because that's what I call it, like a waiting room. It was like, it wasn't, there was no chairs or anything. It was just, I knew I was in a room, but I couldn't see the walls, but I knew I was in a room. So it's just my knowing was what it was. Very hard to, I don't expect anyone to understand that because I even still don't understand it. It's the best I could do, the language I have available to me at the time.
I've been using the word lately, well, sometimes. And I kind of like this word better. And since you've been over there and you're a scientist, maybe I'm curious if you think it's more accurate or not. But instead of calling it our higher selves, what if we called it our complete selves?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So right, yeah, like the original, like the actual file, the master file,
Mhm.
from which we're like copied and pushed out to God knows how many dimensions or whatever. Yes, like I like that. That's better. Higher self sounds a little kind of cheesy to me sometimes too. Like a lot of the spiritual terms I shy away from because I feel like they're kind of too, I don't know, like mainstream at this point, and like too kind of they have like that insincerity to them. And higher self is one of those terms that I feel that way about. So I like yours better. Yeah.
And do you think it's possible that this realm that we live in is just a simulation?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I do. I do. I've had like some weird experiences that I feel like are glitches in that reality or in our reality that are just really bizarre. And I'm just like,
Like, like what?
like, you know, going someplace and hanging out with people and then finding out that that place doesn't exist in reality. Like that
Wow.
has happened. Yeah. Like, I mean, even with, I had the GPS coordinates still in my car and I went to just drive by it and there's like a house there instead of this apartment building we were in. And I'm like, what? And it wasn't there. There's been like things like that happen, or just, I had an apartment that I lived in Sherman Oaks that was haunted, I guess you'd say, but my stuff would go missing all the time and never came back. Like it never reappeared. So where to go? Like literally, I mean, things like, car keys or hairbrushes or remote controls that just vanished. And I live by myself and they're right there and now they're gone. Or they're in the freezer, like what that happened one time where like my keys were in the freezer and I just walked in the door from work and hadn't gone to the kitchen yet. I put my keys down by the front door and they're in the freezer. It was just weird stuff like that. Like, I don't know, is that a ghost doing it or is it just a glitch? I have no clue. There's too many weird things that happen. I think that it could definitely be a simulation or a hologram or whatever, I guess. I mean, that's what the government determined, right? You've read
I don't
the
know. Tell me
Gateway
about.
Project.
But what
Yeah.
was that? I don't know if I've read.
The
I don't know.
gateway analysis.
I mean, is that with Bob
Yeah, yeah,
Monroe
yeah.
stuff?
Yeah, yeah.
But
Like
I don't.
the hologram.
I haven't read the research on that. Can you tell us?
Oh, yeah. So the Army Corps of Engineers, you know, physicist or doctor that did the report had said, like factually reported, it's a fact finding document about how the our universe is just a hologram, and why that is, how a hologram can retain all detail of the original, and be infinite copies over and over, and things can just play out that way. And it's quantum mechanics and quantum physics. It's really hard to understand, but it's it's a amazing document that's it's very illuminating, to say the least, to know that at least even our government has studied and put a lot of money towards that, and that was the fact finding, was that this is a hologram and that we stem from something called the absolute. That's what they put in that document, is it's
Hmm.
the God is called the absolute. So you should, yeah, like there's if you, I can send you like a breakdown of it. Like I found one that a guy does a breakdown of it, so it's not so quantum heavy, because that can be hard for people that don't have that background to understand. I can't even really make sense of it. So
Yeah, it'd be great.
there's a guy that breaks it down for you pretty well.
Where do you think dreams fit in, and what are we doing when we're dreaming?
Right. Okay. Well, first of all, like the Western culture is like one of the only cultures that doesn't view dreams as real, right? So almost all other traditional cultures view whatever happens in your dream time is just as significant as real life waking time. So we say it's all, just in our head. And some of it is, I mean, if you've studied any psychology with like dream analysis and interpretation, like there's different categories of dreams and things. And so this is something I've been studying heavily in my program. And, yeah, there's some things that are definitely real. I feel like, I mean, I don't know. I think most of us have had a situation where we go to bed and we have a vivid dream and we wake up tired, like we didn't sleep. Like we might as well have been doing whatever we were doing in our dream. And that, and some people believe that is exactly why we're still tired. It's because we are actually traveling and doing things in another realm, dimension. I'm not sure, while we sleep. And I believe that, like, because I have dreams that are recurring, like scenes. Like I have one that's in Greece. And like I have a condo over there. I know where I hide the key, and like I meet up with my friends. And I've actually had recently a situation where one of my friends was like, let's meet in our dreams on Friday night. And I was like, sure. Right. And but it happened. And I was like, the next day I get on Facebook and she goes, hey, what did you think of my place last night? And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, I know, I saw you. And I was like, and she repeated everything that I saw in my dream. And I was like, shut up. I scared. It actually really kind of freaked me out because I was like, I hadn't said a word yet. Like I thought it was just a dream. And she's like, what did you think about, my place and my servants or whatever? She had like these like handmaidens in her, like in this dream. It was so ridiculous. And it was like so over the top. And she reiterated it to me. And I was like, what? Wow. Okay. So, I mean, I can't deny that. I mean, that happened. Like, so she didn't, unless she was reading my mind, which is just as creepy, like, I don't know how she would have known that. So yeah, I think it's possible. I think in our dream state, reconnect with, the spirit world a lot easier than we do in waking time. Like my uncle, okay, I had an experience about this. My favorite uncle, Terry, um, after my dad was arrested and went to prison for a double homicide when I was at 2. On my second birthday, he was arrested. And my uncle took over, like being my dad, basically. After that, and I was really close to him, but he died in 2015, right before my near death experience, actually. And I didn't get to say bye. He had died unexpectedly, and he was up north in Fresno, and I'm here in LA. And I was so sad about it. And I had a dream, and he came to me in this dream, and it was so real. Like I got up and I reached around and I hugged him. I could feel his bony arms and I could smell his smell and everything. And he told me I was right, because we had this ongoing thing about like life after death. Like, is it real? Because my thing was like, I don't really believe in it, but what's the harm in believing it? If God forbid, if the opposite's true, and like if you don't believe in it, you go somewhere bad, right? So we would argue and bicker about this all the time. And he was an atheist, like a staunch atheist. And he looks at me and he goes, "You were right." And I was like, I know I was right. And then I go to hug him and he just dissipated in my arms. And I was like hugging myself, and I woke up and I had tears streaming down my face. And I was like, thank you for coming. I knew it was not a dream. Like there's nothing anyone could tell me to convince me otherwise. That was straight up my uncle saying, hey, it's cool. I'm fine. And I'm so appreciative of that. So if that can happen and that was real, then of course, I think our guard's down. Our human pollution guard is down while we're sleeping. And that's why we can have such fantastical dreamscapes, because we're open again, like we were kids, when we had imagination, things like that.
Did your uncle appear to you like in his prime?
No, he appeared to me just like himself, like how I remembered him.
At his current age of death?
Well, actually, let me take that back. Let me think about. No, he actually was younger than because when he died, he had like all white hair, white and gray hair, and so when I saw him in my dream, he did not. He was probably 45. Yeah, so I guess so. That would be my age now. So yeah, I guess I'll say private life, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like a visitation dream like what you had, the person usually looks younger and more vibrant and healthier.
Yeah. I mean, he was still like really bony and skinny like you, but that was just him. And he was, yeah, I mean, he looked happy. he had a real problem with agoraphobia, and like, he had a issue with social anxiety, so he never really left the house. And he was out in my dream. He was at a cafeteria where I saw him, and which made sense because he was so about school and making sure I got a good education. And so he met me in the lunchroom, of a school to have lunch with me. And it was really nice. I was so grateful for that.
Do you fear death at all?
No, no, I fear like not seeing my children, like especially my little one, because I have one that's just 7, and she's, just the sweetest thing on the face of the planet. And my other one's 26 now. So, I mean, she's like grown and she's doing her own thing now, and I'm super proud of her. But like the idea that I wouldn't see the rest of it, uh, is that's a bit scary to me. But at the same time, I know that I would still see it anyway. So I'm really not, like before, I was definitely scared of it. Like, definitely. But now I'm just like, oh no, because that's not the end. It's just the beginning of something else.
Interesting that you said you would still see it anyways. Are you
Mhm.
saying that you would still be able to watch from the other
Mhm.
side?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
do you think that we can watch or see anybody's lives from the other side?
I do. I think that, because again, if you think about it, you can see it. So if, I mean, I don't know that how much of a tie remains to this side when we are over, and it's actually a done deal. We're not coming back, because I didn't have that experience, right? So I can't really say, but I would assume based on what happened in my experience, where I could just think of something and then know it and see it, that would be the case. So if I was like, well, how's Lucy doing? I would be able to see that. But again, like I can't say that we would even be thinking that way at that point, because it would be done. We would not be coming back. So I can't, but I would like to imagine that that would be the case. Also the time issue though, because time is not, like basically the way I put it is, when I was on the other side, it was like life here was moving at such a slow pace, like super slow-mo, like my time was, I wasn't even thinking about time. But as I looked down, occasionally to see back into the hospital area, things were really slow. So I don't, it didn't seem real time. If that makes sense. Like it was a different, it's non-linear. Like things are happening like at the simultaneously all the time, and you can experience it where we can't do that here. So it's hard for me to say that we would even have the time to think about our past connections on this realm, but I like to think so.
Nobody's ever said this, but it'd be fascinating to have someone who was having a near death experience see one of their friends or relatives dreaming and interact with them in their dream, kind of like a visitation dream that you had.
Yeah, I've actually read stories like that in some of my like in my studies about people that have had a dream, and they found out that they were dreaming at the time of the death of somebody, and that in their dream that person came to say goodbye. But I haven't heard from a person that was the person dying. Yeah, that would be interesting, like how they did that. Yeah, how they infiltrated the dream.
Have you had any out of body experiences since your NDE?
Oh, before I did, before I had, so that was the other thing, is my near death experience let me know that, oh crap, I've probably died a few times before this. When I was on Oxycontin, like the feeling of leaving my body and floating was happened quite a bit. And so when I came back, I was like, oh my God, like it really scared me. That part scared me because I was like, how many times has this happened before? Like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, oh God, I gotta get my crap together. This is not good. Like, so, but yeah, I've had them, but only with like use of like, psilocybin or something like that. Typically, I guess you would say those have been pretty intense, but not not really since then. I haven't tried to do that, but I've been much more connected regardless.
When you did have those out of body experiences, did you see anything as well, or were you
Oh
just
yeah.
in the darkness?
Oh no, no. Like yeah. No, I did. Oh my God, this is like, okay, so my little one Lucy, her name is her name is Lucy because I had an experience where I met her great grandmother who passed away, and her name was Lucy. And I verify, like I was out talking to this lady. She was telling me about her life in Trinidad and how we had been kindred sisters before, and I needed to wake up. I needed to wake up. And she just said, like, she mentioned something about having some kind of seed, and I didn't know what she meant. And then I later found out I was pregnant, and that was her granddaughter, my great granddaughter that I had, and her name was Mama Lucy. So I named my little one Lucy
Hmm, cool.
after an out of body experience I had. Like, so that's how serious that experience was. And I was able to, and here the crazy thing is that I had just met her father, right? Like I just met him, and so I knew nothing about his family at all. And she told me all this stuff, and I was able to verify all of it. And not only that, the first time I walked into the house, I see a picture of her, and it was like in this picture frame that literally was like glowing to me, like it was like look at me kind of thing. And I was like, oh my god! And it was, her dress was the same, everything, because she was wearing this really odd dress that looked like she was from the 1800s almost. But she wasn't that old, like, so it didn't make sense. But then I find out in Trinidad, they're behind on fashion by quite a bit. And so they were wearing those dresses at that time. And here's the picture of her exactly how I saw her. Like, I was like, oh my God, like, and her name's what? Lucy? Oh my God, like, no way. So that to me was a crazy validation that I was like, well, that's what I'm naming my daughter then. Like, because she told me ahead of time, like, wake up and like she was telling me to reconnect with myself, like before I'd even died. So kind of weird.
Since your purpose is to be a teacher, what can you teach us now about life, near death experiences, or anything from what you've experienced that will benefit us all?
So I think the most important thing is to, like everybody worries about, when I die, I'm going to like look back at my life and like, did I do this or that right or whatever? You need to be worried about how other people, like how you affect other people. So it's like you could live the greatest life, but if you're a jerk every day and like you're treating people poorly and it impacts those people's day, you know what I mean? Like if you're rude and say you're like just in a bad mood and you smart off to somebody that's serving your coffee or something, and then that person has a bad day, like that's the kind of crap that you're going to be like looked at. I think like that is like you need to be nice to other people about like everything, like don't take your crap out on other people and heal your traumas. Like if you have underlying unresolved trauma, all you're doing is perpetuating that stuff to your next generation. Your kids are going to have it. Like if you don't solve it, like it's really important to like clear the slate karmically for the next generation that of your offspring, because like you need to, like, why would you want them to suffer too? So like do the work that's necessary. It's not easy work, to like um, be nice and like not let things impact you to the point where you're outwardly acting out towards other people, like we don't even think about it because you're like, yeah, I don't know that person who they don't care. I was rude. Yeah, maybe they do though. And like, maybe now you just set someone else's day off and now they've had a crappy day because you decided to be a jerk. Like that kind of stuff I feel is really prevalent in our society these days. Like everyone only cares about themselves and they don't care about community and being, part of a society, like part of society. Like they care about society revolving around them, I think. And it's really important because at the end of the day, we're all connected, like it or not. Doesn't matter what race, religion, it doesn't, none of that matters. We're all the same. So like get out of that mindset of being different or better than or whatever, and like start being an active part of your collective, because otherwise, like what purpose are you serving? Like, I don't know. I think you need to take a look at the things about yourself. Everyone needs to look at the things they don't like about themselves and actually start to learn to integrate and appreciate instead of suppressing, so that they end up projecting all their negativity on others, if that makes sense. Like, I really think that why right now we have such dark times and things going wrong is because so many people just sweep things under the rug and don't take care of them head on. So take care of your stuff head on.
Have you ever thought about that there are more people on the planet than ever right now? And where are all these souls coming from?
I mean, I have no idea. Like you know, some of them I think are new, like some behaviors to me, I'm like, wow, you must be new. Like, you don't have that, the very selfish, ego driven, people. But then again, I was like that, and now I'm not. So I think I'm not sure. It could be from other. I don't know. Like, are we humans only here, or are we elsewhere? Or are we incarnating into other things in other dimensions, other universes? I have no idea. But there's like 8 billion of us now, right? Like
Oh,
close
yeah,
to 8
I think
billion.
next week, 8 billionth person is supposed to be born.
Oh my gosh, are you serious? Yeah, our carry capacity for the Earth is way below that. So I don't know, like how, I don't know where they're coming from. Could be just reincarnated again. Maybe they're not new. Maybe they're just here recycling, learning more lessons, right?
Mm.
I mean, and that's the other thing. It's like, if this is school, like I want to be done, like I want to graduate. So I try to do everything I can, like to be a good person and give back to people and not be selfish. I know I'm not always successful at this, but I do my best. And I don't want to have to come back here because I think it's just going really bad. Like lately it's been getting kind of crazy. And I think I'd rather advance to the next level, whatever that is, if it's possible. But I think we have multiple places that we're supposed to be. Like, um, I so I think a lot of the times our soul, these are just souls like reincarnating again. Um, Maybe, I don't know, like until I have any proof of something else, that's I could just say maybe just reincarnating back over and over. Who knows how many lessons we have to learn? I don't know. But it seems like the overall one though is about loving your neighbor. Literally, the hardest thing that we just can't wrap our heads around for some reason. Um, that's the big one, and I think that's the one that is the hardest to learn, and that's maybe why we keep coming back.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are
Hmm.
you open to that?
Sure, yeah, that's fine.
What's the best way to reach you?
So I have, well, my website I have a website for tarot readings and shadow work, help, for inner child trauma healing. And that's A Stone Tarot. So it's just like A, like Anna, stonetarot.com. And then I also have this that that's my handle across all social media. So um, TikTok or YouTube or Facebook, it's all A Stone Tarot. Um, because I started that way because I've been reading tarot since I was 12, but I'm using it not the way traditionally you would think. I'm using it to help in, connecting people, like their inner, like what they need to work on to heal from trauma. That's how I'm using tarot in this sense. So it's not like get my love prediction reading or anything like that. It's more about self-development.
How has your tarot readings changed after your NDEs?
Oh, well, yeah, they've changed significantly. I just, I don't know. Like, it's hard to say. I just let it go. Like before I was so stuck on like what each card meant, like the definition of them. Now I don't, now it's just like it's like, tarot is just a key for me. It's like I use it to open the door, and then like I get information in my head, and I'm not even reading cards anymore. I'm just hearing things like, and then I just repeat those things out loud. And then the client will, tell me like, you know, uh, how did like, and it's been pretty crazy. So it's been like, yeah, like they're like, how do you know that? Like, what card says that? And I'm like, it's not from the card. I'm sorry. Like, I just use that to kind of get things going, right? I guess you
Yeah,
could say.
like to
So
connect.
before I was really stuck on like, this is what this card means. And like, now it's just more intuitive.
Oh.
It is all intuitive.
Well, are you working on anything that you want us to know about?
So I'm having to start my thesis here soon, which I'm going to be working on trauma, why trauma makes us like why experiencing trauma in early childhood is a reason to be psychic. Like, why does that cause people to have the ability to connect to the collective, right? So if anyone has any insight into that, and that would be great, when you, because as far as I know, it's not answered yet. So I'd love to know, like, that's what I'm going to be researching coming up. But yeah, like I'm a research junkie. So like all my research papers I've written are all online on ResearchGate or academia.edu. And like, my projects are all going to be about research stuff, science stuff, or consciousness studies. So, or stress, like psychology of trauma and stress, and then consciousness are my two fields of interest. And so I'm combining those for this thesis. And hopefully I'll get anyone that has insight. Like I'd love to hear from, as to why they think that is.
Annalee, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
I mean, yeah, like be nice to your neighbors. Like don't be, so selfish. Like be nice, be kind. And also like if we're older, and it's really easy to get annoyed with the younger generations, I think, right? As a teacher, trust me, it is. But remember that like we leave an impact on people. Like, take your time out of the day, like say something nice to somebody. You see someone you like, drop a compliment them. Like you never know. We don't know what people's life's like when they go back home. The nice thing you say could be the only nice thing that person's heard in a very long time. And it could do something it could lift their spirits just enough to keep them, from doing something harmful or anything, like just be nice. Like you don't have to be so negative. In fact, when you start being nicer things happen for you. It's like your mindset attracts your reality and creates your reality. So if you're negative all the time, you're going to have negative situations happening. So try to be more positive and think on a scale of like, how do you want people to remember you, and like act accordingly.
Annalee, thank you for that message, and thank you again for being my guest.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.